I'd like to call together to order the Wednesday, October 27th meeting of the Monona City Council Committee of the Whole, continuing our review of the 2022 operating budget. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Thomas?
Here.
Alder Goforth?
Here.
Alder Groupie?
Here.
Alder Moore?
Here.
Alder Wood?
Here.
Alder Cooler?
Here.
Mayor O'Connor?
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Our first speaker will be Will Nimau, speaking about the community media budget. Or Mark, did you have it?
Just one little quick thing. When I handed out this paper tonight, I just want to explain this. We've been harping on this last meeting about the expenditure restraint program. So right now we can't exceed 3.2%. So this shows where we're at right now and how it's determined. So you take the general fund expenditures, you can take the levy limits from the library, community rec center, which is the pool, rec, community center, and the senior center, the EMS levy, solid waste levy, and the transit levy. As you can see, the increases, 2% for the general levy, library 6%, transit's at 31%, the big one. So we're at 2.72. We're not allowed to, has to be under 3.2, so the most we can go to is 3.1, which would be 261,000. So we're 31, almost 32,000 under that. So just so you're aware of how it's all calculated.
That does not mean we have 32,000 available.
No, this is means we're under. So, for instance, if say you want to use fund balance to transfer the debt service, you can't exceed that number, otherwise you lose your.
Thank you.
You'd lose your expenditure restraint, which is like roughly 130.
Which would cost us a lot of money. Okay, community media. I think this is on page 101. Will, would you like to?
All right. So you'll see again, these are this budget is funded through the franchise fees, TDS, Charter, Spectrum, and AT&T Uverse. The other revenue is the Monona Grove School District. Not much of a change in line items other than the full-time wages has increased due to the basically the re-planning, I guess, or refinancing for the multimedia content producer position, which is 70% funded by the school district and 30% funded by the city, which is where we come up with the number under the other revenue.
Just so you know, we will be talking about this wages in the closed session.
Sorry, what?
We'll be talking, just so the council is aware, the last thing in the closed session. The large wage increase, we'll talk about that in the closed session.
Okay. We did not change anything through the years. The part-time wage does fluctuate, as you can see, and has fluctuated due to essentially the pandemic and whether or not we have a youth apprentice through the high school or not. I try to keep money in there for that occasion so that I can offer that to students, and it's a great way to get students involved and keep that that part of the department strong, which is struggling right now as far as being away from the students for a year and a half. We have one part-time student right now. Usually we'd have 4 to 5 covering all these meetings as a group of 2, as you know. So we're rebuilding that, and part of the fund also, part of the part-time wages also go towards the radio station. As you know, or may have remembered, October of 2019, we came across a gentleman named Eric Jandro through the Department of Workforce Development Vocational Rehabilitation Program, and the state paid for him to work with us through January 2020. And then we took him on as a part-time employee after that. He works from home. That's essentially the only way he's able to do it. He remotes into our computer and works on programming the station, doing a lot of the day-to-day programming that would take up a considerable amount of time. He works about 15 hours a week, and that would otherwise be done by myself or Brennan at this point. We have also lost our volunteer music director and program director, listened to the station all the time, kept a keen eye on everything, and would, help troubleshoot. He kind of stepped down. So I did, again, just kind of talking about the part-time wages, keep it at the $16,000 because I have possibly somebody who is willing to help out with that, but they will need to get paid a little bit. And so through this transition, since July of not having another employee, I have been paying them to help out when needed. So that's why that number stays the same, even though we've never hit that number, as you can see. A lot of these other numbers are pretty straightforward. I can certainly walk through line item if you'd like. However, they're all straightforward as far as the expenses that we need for running the radio station and for streaming the radio station and for streaming these meetings and the equipment that we need and the software that we need. There's no, like I say, no changes and no big updates this year, I will say, to the operating budget. I do see probably the part-time wages being a point of discussion as we move forward. It continues to be difficult to keep up with demand. The radio station has a lot of content, and it's a lot of pertinent content, so as we try to continue that, help is needed along with trying to improve the newsletter as we go and improve our communications with Facebook and things like that, and trying to reach out to the community in other ways.
I know your committee asked to have some money covered by the general fund for the newsletter. There's not in there just because the franchise fees and everything in his budget was covered, so we did not make an adjustment for that. If there was over, like if we had to use fund balance, then we would have made that adjustment, but we didn't need to for this year. Because they wanted to charge some wages for doing the newsletter for the city.
Right.
Mark, could you speak up? Sorry.
Yeah, the committee kind of wanted to use, I don't remember the exact dollar amount, was it $3,000 or $4,000? They wanted the general fund to cover the cost to do the newsletter. We didn't put it in here because his franchise fee and his budgets were complete. His franchise fees covered his operating budget, so there was no need to it. We're actually $83 more franchise fees, more revenues by $83.
Right.
So we did not do it for this year, but I know we're talking about it for the future years when it comes close.
Alder Thomas?
Couple of questions. The reason the issue came up is because we were struggling. We had to increase staff salaries,
Sure.
and we were taking on the newsletter.
Sure.
And the city had been spending money to mail out a newsletter. I am constantly amazed at how Will manages his budget and what we pay for with the cable fees, because the cable fees are paying for the newsletter now. Mm-hmm. And we weren't sure we would have enough money to pay for that. And it seemed reasonable to the committee to transfer the money that we were spending to mail the newsletter out to cover the cost of doing the newsletter, since we were doing that in-house. And now my question, one of my questions to you, Will, is of the increase in the other revenues from 60 thousand to 78,000, is that an increase in what we got from the school district?
Yeah, so that is now what we will be billing out quarterly.
Bill them quarterly, so you explain how much we charge per.
And what will we be using that $18,000 for?
Oh, that is strictly because of the increase in pay for the multimedia content producer position.
So I really wanted you all to know that so that you can appreciate that increase in salary the school district covered. The city didn't do that. And
They covered a big chunk of it.
And we are very grateful to the school district for their support of the cable. I mean, they
Yeah.
give us a huge,
I would say, though, that our staff will, and now Brennan, do an awful lot for the school district.
of course they
too. I
do.
mean, they earn their money.
Of course they do.
Yep.
But if you look proportionally, I mean, I think they pay 70%.
They pay 70% of his salary and 30% of mine.
And we're fortunate that they're willing to do that from their community fund.
Well, and, one thing I'll put out there is I don't take health insurance, nor does Brennan, other than single payer. The minute any of that changes, it goes up $20,000, and all of a sudden, their 78 is going to go to 92, and then we might have a conversation. So that's something to keep in mind. As well as, as I do the budget, I try to do it where, as we know, I don't really have a capital budget, right? I have $1 amount, and I spend that amount that I have. Whatever revenue I have is what I stay in. So the equipment line item essentially is a capital budget. And I could see that, right, just getting eaten away if the franchise fee goes down, which we know they will, whether it'll be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Essentially, I'll probably have to reduce the equipment expenses to cover the operation expenses. And that's when, I think you guys will have to look at what do we do? Where's our next steps? How do we bring this into the budget so that we can continue to do what we're doing or reduce services?
Yeah, I agree. Eventually, it's definitely going to have to come out of the general fund, at least some of it. Any other questions?
Although I was going to say that Will and I have been working, and we will try and get donations from businesses to fund some things like the weather program. We're talking to the bank about that, so.
Are you still getting funding for the football games?
It didn't this year just because of, we didn't really,
So, but we're trying to look at alternative sources of legally having sponsors for
Right.
stuff.
Alder Brewer?
I understand that the city, that we didn't need to tap into city funds at this point because we had the franchise fees. I get concerned because the franchise fees carry over, whereas city funds don't carry over. And eventually those franchise fees are going to go away. And I don't want to suddenly then have to come to the city and the city doesn't have something for us. If the city has something for media at this point, I guess I'd like to see us spend that through city dollars as opposed to franchise fees, because then their franchise fees will go longer.
Right. And we have, in our fund balance right now, we have about 55,000 or something.
About 60,000 in fund balance right now. And you're talking about the newsletter that goes out monthly. You're not talking about the one that Jake does, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, the e-newsletter.
The
Yeah.
e-newsletter, correct.
So there's a little bit of difference in that when we talk about mailing and stuff, because Jake still mails that. He's planning on still mailing.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know where that stands. I haven't talked to Jake or.
Alder Moore, did you have something?
Yeah, I understand that we're anticipating that franchise fees are going to go down, but I'm actually kind of impressed that they are where they are, and I'm wondering if that's, because I know we've been expecting kind of a pretty deep dive pretty quickly, and it seems like, is that do you think a combination of the increase in the number of residents that we have, as well as the fact that we have a new game in town and TDS, so more people are signing up?
No, I mean, that's only, I think the last quarterly payment we got from TDS was like $1,500. So
Okay.
in a year, it's 5,000 or something.
Okay.
So that's not a big concern. What actually happened was the bill was passed in the legislature that said 4%, it used to be 5%, now it's only 4% of the franchise fees are going to go to the municipality that it serves.
Right.
And the other 1% is going to be paid for by the taxpayers. So really, a percent of this budget, like 25,000, is from our taxes.
Okay.
The minute a new governor comes in and a new budget is proposed, that could all change, and we could go from having 120,000 to 90,000 essentially overnight if they voted out. And they almost didn't take the whole 1% in the biannual budget he just came up with. It was only 0.5%, and we almost lost about 12,000, but luckily in the last minute there was some whatever, right? And they finally passed it as 1% through 2023. So when that next budget process comes up, there's a chance if they're going to cut, they might cut that 1% that taxpayers are paying, which is like $10 million throughout the state. And if they do that, we'll lose. Right now, currently, if that 1% goes away, I think we get 25,000 from the state. So if that ever goes away, that's it'd be a $25,000 chunk.
Okay.
When they did the 1%, we were actually kind of at a nice number. So they took like a base year, and one of the base years they took was a good number for us. So that helped.
That did help.
It wasn't declining years, one of the top years, so that helped to keep that number up. Keep that number there.
Thank you. Alderwood?
Yeah. Kind of following up on Alder Moore's question, looking back at the last 3 years, we've been right around 120,000, really no erosion, a little bit maybe. Do you know what the peak was? Or?
The peak was like right when I started in like 2017. I think it was 132, or 2016 it was 136.
It's creeping down pretty slowly so far.
Yeah, so yeah, we've lost about 16,000 over the last 5 years or so, 6 years. Yeah.
And I'd be curious with the new apartments, how much that has an effect. They don't really tell us, but I don't know what's in those new current buildings, if that's TDS or Charter or what they have in.
Oh, the current, yeah. I'm not sure, who gets that contract, right? I'm
Yeah.
not too sure.
Who has the contract for the other one, do you know?
But I know like Tracesta, I'm pretty sure doesn't. I don't even know if they had cable run in there or something. They did it differently in some way because they went to a different company that gave them Wi-Fi, and I don't know. Maybe they do, but I'm not too sure how that works, to be honest with you, who gets the contracts and who doesn't.
Any
But
other
you-
questions?
Okay.
Bill, did you have anything else?
I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And next is the Sustainability Committee, page 27, and I think Brian and Brad are both going to talk about this.
Yeah, I'll highlight just kind of the big, relatively big change, and then Brad, feel free to step in with any other items I might miss. As you may recall, at least one or maybe two budget cycles ago, we kind of collapsed the sustainable planning intern within the executive office budget just for ease of management and budget accounting. What's being proposed for this year is to actually increase the salary of this part-time position from $15.75 up to $18 an hour to reflect new job duties and responsibilities now that this position is taking on more responsibility of kind of managing, kind of serving as the staff lead for the Sustainability Committee. One thing to note about this position, it's our understanding, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, that Lisa will not be with us for forever. There are some things that she wants to do, so it's likely in the next year or so that she'll be moving on to bigger and better things. With that being the case, it would be a good time for us to now reclassify this position, at least in terms of its title. Instead of calling it a planning intern, look to call it a sustainable planning coordinator or sustainability coordinator, so that when we do inevitably have to go and market this position again to the university or somewhere else, that we can get a wider pool of applicants rather than just those that have kind of a planning background. So that's one thing that we're looking to doing is retitling this position in this budget. And then to pay for the increase in the wage, the Sustainability Committee agreed to reduce $1,000 from their community campaigns and $250 from their professional development fund to cover the increase in that wage line item. Brad, is there anything that I missed on that item?
No, I don't think so. I think, well, the only thing that's going to be an issue is if we have to hire somebody midstream next year, or for that matter, going forward. The idea would be that what we've already thought of was to make this a permanent part-time position, like Brian was alluding to. And then the debate moving forward in subsequent years would be whether or not to apply any type of benefits program to the position itself. Right now, it's just hourly wage. So
That's something that will depend on the number of hours.
Yes. Yeah.
Position.
Yeah. If the position were to work north of 20 hours, then yes, we'd have to look at benefits. Yeah.
Any questions? Alder Groupie, then Alder Moore.
Alder Moore was first. You go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just as a follow-up, as it relates to the position, first of all, of course, the Sustainability Committee supports this change. And second, that as much as I know we have a lot of staffing needs here in the city, it's, our ability to move forward in terms of our commitment to sustainability as a city is really hampered by the fact that we have somebody that only works a very small number of hours. And so I would just like this council to know that, inclusive of considering potentially this year, that I would like to advocate for this position being more part-time than it is right now, with a greater number of hours than it is right now, on behalf of the Sustainability Committee, because again, we've made a commitment as a city, and it's just a tiny number of hours to try to get the kind of work done that we need to get done.
How many hours actually is it?
It's about 20.
About 20 hours at halftime.
But it's 20 between plan and sustainability, is it not? Right. So it actually, it's 10 hours a week towards sustainability is nothing in comparison to our sister cities. And we just really need to think seriously about aligning we always talk about budgets reflecting our values. And I think we just need to be aware that that alignment is not there right now because of the small amount that's dedicated to that.
Alder Groupie?
I would second what Nancy said, and I just want to, since my time on the council, the position has been filled by just several very phenomenal women with Sierra and Kaiten, and now with Elisa. And Elisa is the person whom I've gotten the closest, but she is just an incredibly
Amazing resource.
She's just an extremely hard worker. She puts so much time and resources of her own outside of the time that is dedicated to the position. I think just for festival work and things of that nature. And I'm just so impressed with her as an individual. And I think to reward her and pay her what her work is worth, in addition to incentivizing the position for the next hopefully incredible woman to come along and take the job. I think this is a really important move, so that's all I have to say.
Anyone else?
Okay.
I do have one other end. So kind of related to that note, so we're talking about kind of the breakdown of hours for this position. One thing that is also, and we'll talk about it later in my section, we are looking at using some TIP money and some reallocation of some Renew Monona money to cover some time that City Planner Plowman works on Renew Monona, which would then free up some flexibility so we can hire a separate planning intern that would spend 10 hours a week doing planning related things, so that would then free up maybe not all of those 10 hours, but somewhere between 5 to 10 hours a week that this present sustainability planning intern helps with Doug. So we are looking, I hear what you're saying, and yes, long-term, that's something that the council has to consider with this position, but in the short term, there's a more of immediate need to have somebody that focuses on kind of the day-to-day planning stuff to help city planner Plowman. By doing that, and we found a way to handle that, we can then free up some time within this position to focus more hours on sustainability.
Great,
Great, thanks.
thank you. Anything else?
I just wanted to highlight the other two items. Sorry.
Okay, Brad?
The other two items in the sustainability budget are the annual Earth Day or Earth Week event, and the extra item is just miscellaneous funds to be used for marketing materials, things like T-shirts and stuff like that. So those are the only other items in the sustainability budget that are left over after we remove that sustainability intern position and the professional development and the other marketing line item. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to the library. Page 107, Ryan.
I blame myself.
I'll take it.
5-second rule.
Salary increase denied.
Hello, everyone. All right. So with the library operating budget, I apologize. It's been a year, and frankly, the last year feels like 10 years, and I haven't had a brownie to jumpstart my mental brain. Would you prefer I go over the differences that are being asked compared to last year, or would you like me to go through every single line item?
You don't have to go through every line item.
I'll go to
Just the big stuff.
Great. Starting off with the library staff salaries, there is an increase of $3,500 to go towards the director's salary. This is in looking at the library board looked at other direct.
We're going to be discussing market rates
I'll move on.
increases for
Great.
several people.
Okay.
That are going through your-
I'll move on then. Wages and part-time, so an increase of $8,000. So the library is, we used to have 2 library assistants positions. Those have been unfilled due to funding moving to somewhere else. And in that time then, salaried staff have been covering the desk to help fill in those gaps. During that time then, the salaried staff have to limit what they do per their position. And looking at this $8,000 to fill one of those 2 positions, so then we would be able to have that desk coverage by the people that are supposed to be there and being paid the wage that really is meant to be covering the desk, and the salaried staff can then move on towards more larger picture things that the library does, such as outreach, programming, and really working on our strategic plan. It's difficult to do that while you work in the front desk, be in the front line of the staff. We are still going to have 11 hours, so one position that will still be covered by staff, but the coverage of 50% of that will be instrumental in helping us actually be focusing more on the large picture stuff.
Just so you know, that position was cut last year because they asked to increase some of their salaried people, so that's
Correct.
why that was cut last year.
They want to make the children's library.
Yeah, the youth services coordinator was not full-time. We were the only library in the county to not have a full-time youth services librarian. We deemed that a priority.
Choice of the former.
Yes. There's a history there that that was a choice, and when that person retired, then is an opportunity to make that full-time, so we are at scale with the rest of the libraries in the county. There is an increase of $1,000 for SCLS membership and service payment. Our regional library system that covers all of our services, including technology, delivery, they periodically will have an increase. They do their best to not have an increase or to keep it as minimum as possible. With COVID and everything, especially with costs due to delivery, there is an increase of $1,000, which is represented then in that line item. The building and equipment maintenance repair, that item is, as that fluctuates, we try to base that as much as we can based on the repairs that we have done in this building. As you all are all aware, building is lovely. It is old. One part is really old. The other part is getting to be old. And we deal with a lot of Frankenstein-esque type situations here, especially when it comes to HVAC, even though it's much appreciated to the city putting funding towards replacing that HVAC, so eventually we will not have to maintain it. But we've had boiler issues, we've had HVAC controller issues. Things are falling apart, we fix them. But I try to base this on what was done previously in the previous year, and that's why if there's any difference in that line item, it's based on those projects that have come up. And I'm looking for a decrease of $1,000 with AV and so audiovisual for materials. We're looking at DVDs and CDs as the open market keeps having streaming services available. We are seeing that circulation for those, while still happening, do go down a little bit, and we're also able to cover any additional that we need from other sources such as Friends or Foundation funding. So I feel like that $1,000 is able to be covered to still meet the needs of the community for movies, CDs, and audiobooks on CD. To be clear, that doesn't cover then audiobooks from, like, say, Overdrive. That's a totally different funding source, which those do continue to go up in terms of use. And I believe that is it. There's not a whole lot of changes to this year's operating budget. I'm happy to take any questions.
So if you look at revenues, some might look odd to everybody. If you look at the county aid from library operations, the library facilities, this year we left that 0, and we just combined that with the operation. It was just easier.
Thank you.
For the library. So that's why if you look at it like, why is it 0? It's because it's combined in the line above it.
Yeah, and just as an FYI, when it comes to the county funding, that is based on a 3-year rolling formula. However, the county voted and approved to disregard the quote-unquote COVID year. A lot of that funding is based on physical circulation of items, and they deemed it, in my opinion, accurately that would totally throw off their formula since it's an anomaly type of year. So the funding from the county is the same as the previous year.
Alder Thomas and Alder Wood.
I had 2 questions about the revenues. Under the fines, for year-end estimated, it's $2,500. Next year, it's going to be $6,000. Do we think that's realistic?
That was probably put me in there. I put 2,500 in there just because it's a COVID year, and we kind of really opened the library up.
So where do the fines come from?
You can explain.
The fees come from usually lost or damaged items that we have. So of course we don't have overdue. However, once an item is overdue past a certain point, if it is then deemed lost, and sometimes patrons are still able to return those items, and then that goes away. But often it is not the case, or an item is damaged, and then they are assessed a cost. So that approximation is based on what we think we will see with those damaged and
So you're
lost items.
comfortable with that? And the same thing with the room rentals? Are you comfortable with that the room rentals are going to go back up?
Yes. So we have 2 after-school programs. Now, one of those elected not to continue at all in 2021, but they did say they will go back up in 2022. And that's actually based on a contract, so we are pretty certain about that amount. And we have another after-school theater program that is using it in 2021. They continue to plan to use it in 2022.
Good.
Those 2 alone will cover it, but we also have been seeing more of the public using and organizations using the meeting spaces as word is going out that we have them available to them.
Good, thank you.
Couple questions. One on the equipment maintenance and repair line, as you indicated, is down at 6,000. That's like about half of what it's ever been in the last 4 years or 3, whatever it is. Why do you think we can comply with that amount?
It is an estimate. The estimate is also offset by the work that is being done on the capital project for the HVAC. So the majority of our maintenance is HVAC related, at least the past few years that I've been here. And my, I guess, hope and optimism is that as the HVAC becomes newer, progressively, the maintenance for that will go down.
In going through the budget process, as you notice here on the expenditure restraint, they went up 6% to 35,000. So, to balance our budget, we had to find a way to balance it, and that's one of those things we're looking at. Like he was saying with the HVAC stuff going, and maybe to cut the cost. So that was kind of the rationale. You know, we had to find some areas, and that was a large increase just in general for that fund. So, you know, and they have a large fund balance. You know, the library has probably it's a larger fund balance than I believe. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's like 140 or something like that.
Well, it is always a moving target.
It is. It is a larger one for most of them. All right, so that was some of the rationale, that there's a large item that they have fund balance to be able to cover that. So
Okay.
that's kind of the rationale.
And then just more of a kind of general question. Just wondering how you feel we're doing with the collection and keeping it up to date and culling out things that aren't and so forth.
So the weeding has actually increased since my tenure here. We have a pretty aggressive weeding schedule. A lot of that is just due to our limited space, and I'm looking at new shelving down the road that may help free up some space. But in the meantime, we do try to go through our collection and look at, you know, damaged items. We don't really encounter many items with mold, thank goodness, and knock on wood, because a lot of it does circulate. You know, in looking at circulation, especially in the county, the libraries that tend to have higher circulation also just tend to have higher collections. It's kind of numbers. Like if you have more books to circulate, you're going to get higher circulation. So we do try to maintain, given that we have that space constraint, I would say a highly curated collection. I am looking at eventually phasing out the mass market books, if you're aware of those, at the far end of the fiction, just because those aren't really moving anymore, and they tend to break down really fast. They're not really made to last or like repeat back and forth. And then one thing I do want to highlight with our collection is that we have prioritized doing a collection audit around EDI. So we're looking at all of our collections to see if it accurately has good representation of as many perspectives and voices as we can possibly do. It is slightly problematic because the tools available for this are very limited. It's something that is looked at more in the library profession, but what is available is problematic and frankly very focused on children's collections. So we've been able to start in children's, and then we will move into the tween collection, the teen collection, and adults. But that is something that we're excited about because that will throw out quite a few of our collection items to make space, but in the end we will have a very diverse collection. And when I say that, I mean both in terms of character representation, but also creators. So the writers and the artists, especially when it comes to picture books, will be diverse as it should. So that is a priority of ours.
Okay.
Can you tell me, I know our circulation used to be one of the highest, at least in the county. Where does it rank these days? And I don't know.
When you say highest, was that by numbers or by like capita?
I think it was by number.
Oh, no. I mean, we are on the lower end if you go by numbers. If you look at it per capita, we're I would say average. But it's you know, if I can just tell you, Verona, Sun Prairie, and Middleton are the three highest that are not Madison, and Madison is a whole other beast.
Right.
But those three also have the largest collections, so that goes again to what I was saying, where the more items you have, the more likely that they're going to serve. Circulation is something that we are focused on. We've increased our display space, which we find to be effective. And we're also looking at marketing more of our newer items and get the word out through our social media channels. That helps often. We're also looking at increasing our non-traditional items. We almost had a tool collection that would have been great. Unfortunately, that fell through at the last minute. However, the excitement that was generated just from the possibility of that, recognize that we will probably get a smaller collection, make that available for circulation. And during COVID, the e-books and e-audiobooks, that increased significantly, but that can't be counted as physical, true circulation based on the federal definition. So it's something that, it's a challenge that we still try to think of creative ways to solve.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Please tell me that we have a good collection of Toni Morrison books.
We do, and it's we're still working on having the full body of her work.
Thank you.
Jake.
I think Park starts on page 90 if that's where you're going to starting to.
Oh, come on. Then I'm not going to take notes.
We're going to be talking salary.
Look at you all fancy in your collared shirt. I know, Pressa.
Such a good behavior.
That was in my flannel.
None for me. That's just joking. I don't know. I'll check your numbers.
All right, good evening. To start off, I just want to acknowledge the mayor and this council and this community for its support of our department over the last year. 2021 was a challenging and exciting year. We started the year off basically creating a new school and offering virtual learning for our residents and community members. We're probably one of the only places in the nation where kids could do their virtual schooling and step outside and go ice skating at the Monona Bank River Rink. We benefited, I think, from COVID with the operation of the Monona Bank River Rink this year. Had a lot of great attendance and marketing since a lot of things else were shut down. We opened the pool back up to a record attendance and revenue since I've been here. We had a return to play with our special events, with our youth sports and activities. We had an amazing turnout for our recreation programs, outdoor programs. We were limited to had no access to the Monona Grove School District for any indoor programs, so everything was outdoors. And this is all because of very dedicated, talented staff that we have. So our full-time and seasonal staff, volunteers, really banded together. Not only that, we took operations of San Damiano on June 1st and spent a lion's share of time working up there, working with the Friends Up group and the volunteers to really highlight this acquisition for the city. So I'm beyond proud of the work that our department has done this year and look forward in 2022. The handouts I gave you are some supplement to the budget. Some of it just the cliff notes of the budget, so you can read through that for the changes in 2022. The other sheet is one that we use from a national perspective. We call revenue to expense. So when you look at the 2021 and 2022, the differences with our four budgets, we're looking at a little over $1.5 million budget. The revenue to offset that is $836,000, so that's a 55% revenue to expense. The national average is 29%. We're in the probably the 90th percentile in the nation, the amount of revenue that we're bringing into our expenditures. The other thing that we highlight in this sheet is personnel costs. We're at over $1 million in humans and people, and that's full-time staff, benefits, and seasonals. And so one of the things, the challenges that we have moving forward is the amount of people that we need to put on the programs and facilities that we have. And that includes being able to compensate both full-time and LTE staff to be able to get them on board and retain them. And so we've addressed that in multiple areas of the budget that we'll talk about. But overall, this body approved the transition of a LTE position to full-time position for the recreation programs, our after-school and summer camp project, which we were very grateful for, and the Parks Board recommended the budget pretty much that you see before you tonight with the mayor's budget. So the Parks budget, you don't see the revenues there that we bring in for lake access permits and park shelter rentals, although our revenue producing activities, specifically park shelter rentals, account for a lot of the work that we do in the Parks Department. We also assist all the special events that aren't run by us, like Monona Run, Rock and Brews Marathon, Monona Festival. Those costs are included in the Parks budget as well. The only changes there is just adjustments for the cost to continue to operate. Supply costs continue to go up for paper products, shelter products, et cetera, utilities for the buildings that we have. The San Damiano expenses will now be housed under the parks budget as well. So the utilities, MG&E bill, and any associated repair and maintenance that needs to be done to the facility. One item, as you may remember, is that we are a bird city, Wisconsin designated, and we got reached out by a person that the name of the app escapes me, but there's a very popular birding app, and San Damiano is a hot spot. And so lots of birding activity has been designated, and our International Migratory Bird Day event is going to be at San Dam next year because of the interest in the amount of people wanting to bird up there. So there is money in the parks budget to support that type of event. Okay, questions on the parks budget now?
Anyone? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Nancy. That's right. So, Jake, I know that we did increase a number of the fee-related stuff, particularly around like the special events, because we felt like we were putting out a lot of staff time and everything to accommodate the runs and the other things that we do that go through the city. Do you feel like, I mean, obviously that helps in terms of the overall revenue generation? Was anybody deterred by that, or like did anybody say, "Oh, we're not going to run through Monona anymore because your fees have gone up"? Or I mean,
no.
I feel like that was a good call.
The demand is, the demand exceeds the supply right now.
Okay.
For the amount of groups that want to be here, I have had discussions as we move closer towards presenting the special event ordinance change to this body, and the associated fee schedule is that. I don't want the fees in Monona to be the reason why they're here. So
right.
We will be at the same or more than the City of Madison for hosting an event here.
Right.
It's because it's a great location and it's easier to work with, us maybe than another community.
Sure.
But it shouldn't be about the fees, and we
right.
should be compensated for the time and the opportunity cost to have other events. And there's going to be a sweet spot that we'll have to find on, what's that magical number? Should we have races every weekend,
right.
twice a weekend type of deal, but no, there's certainly not a deterrent. We had one organization that scheduled an event but then canceled just due to the unpredictability of registration numbers with COVID, but it wasn't due to the fee structure that was in place.
And I would also add that a couple of the events that were hosted by Parks this year were never before participated in Monona events, like the Solar Plunge. And then this event that was going to happen was going to be a new partnership as well. So we've received a lot of renewed and new interest in collaboration with our Parks Department for events, special events.
Right.
So, Jake, this may surprise you, but sometimes from time to time I complain because you spend a lot of money. But I want to go on record as saying that I am impressed by the quality of services you provide, but more importantly, that you provide revenue generation at the same time, and you do it outstanding. So as much money as you spend, you get revenue, and you do that. And I'm very grateful for you to do that, and I'm very impressed by your skills at doing it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Don't expect me to do this again now.
Yeah, I think that statistic that you said at the beginning bears repeating, the fact that our revenues exceed national average. So if you could say it again, I think that it bears repeating.
Yeah, 55%, national average is 29%.
That's huge. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's phenomenal.
And you should be proud.
It's an indicator that this community has an appetite for the services that we provide and finds value in them, and they're willing to spend their money here and keep it here.
I would suggest that it's your skill at knowing what the community wants that allows this to occur.
We have a great team over on this.
Especially Doug and me.
Yeah.
I mean, really, we're just...
Collectively.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, what do you want to do next, Jake?
Let's go rec.
Okay, that's page 121, I think.
So,
Just before you start, so a lot of you'll notice a lot of his is, in the sheet again, if you see the sheet I handed out, you'll see the third one down, Community Rec Center, which includes the senior center. They decreased their levy by 3,200. And like Mary said, we'll be talking about, there's a lot of wage changes we'll be talking about in closed session. So that's a lot of this relates to that and fees increases. So just something to look at.
recreation budget had probably the most significant increase in revenue from 2020 to 2021 and anticipated increases from 2021 to 2022. The largest programs that we have, and this is a revenue expense budget, so you can see the revenues on the top and the expenditures on the bottom. The after-school program that we've talked about in the past has exploded in popularity. 45 kids for the 2021-2022 school year, 15 on a waiting list. So again, we have more demand than we have supply. We just literally do not have the room to put any more kids in the building that we have. The summer camp program as well, which really speaks to kind of the changing dynamics of this community as new families move in. It's dual working parent families almost exclusively that are moving into Monona and that need some sort of child care. And quite frankly, we have the best setting. We're in the middle of town. We have access to the pool building. We can keep the kids outside. It's a great addition that we made a decision years ago to support budgetarily. And now we're reaping the rewards of being able to not only cover 100% of a full-time staff wages, but also help reduce the levy overall. In the fees, also what you'll see is an increase in special event revenues. So what that means is more events next year, including beer gardens. We're looking at, this is the year that we activate Grand Crossing Park with the hopefully finalization of phase 3 in the next month. This year was really challenging, again, with parking, with the construction going on. So we held off on offering too much down there because of issues with parking. So as we move into next summer, year 3, we'll be programming that site quite a bit. And we look at doing some programs at San Damiano as well. One of the other things that you see on that line item for revenue is park field rental. So that includes all of our athletic field rentals, USTA that uses their tennis court. If you've noticed the clicking sounds all day long on the tennis court of the pickleball group, some of the money that they pay is there, and they've also contributed to the windscreens and purchased a bench. So new emerging activities happen there. Included in that is also a couple of our exclusive vending permits. So our tree sales that happen, Christmas tree sales at Huska Park in the parking lot in November. They took the year off last year. They'll be back. And then this year we approved a vending permit to Papa's Barbecue. It's a minority-owned business and did an awesome job providing food at Huska Park and paid a fee of $2,000 for the year. So we'll continue to look for those partnerships and collaborations on the revenue line items. So we have, just as the expenditures go, the main after-school program has the staff, the LTE staff associated with it and the expenditures. Grand Crossing includes the ice rink, Monona Bank River Rink, and then all of the revenues that we would have outside of the year. So any events that we would have there, and then those expenditures come out of there as well. And then the wages are broken out for those and the part-time wages.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah.
Doug?
Jake, could you maybe talk a little bit more about the San Damiano programming? I think a lot of people would be interested to know.
So I think certainly I would be looking at what we do at Aldo Leopold with our friends at Aldo Leopold Nature Center. So environmental activities. We had a Bait Buddies fishing club this year that met up there and went fishing. We've had several senior center events happen up there with speakers. We are going to be looking at parking opportunities to be able to host maybe some larger scale events that might include music, food, bev type of deal that we can engage the public in input and showcase this property that we have. Certainly, we anticipate that there's going to be a higher amount of use at the facility next year, potentially, wanting more access to the lake from that property. We still have a lot of ash tree removals to do up there and tree pruning, and some logistics just on how we can handle the events. But working with the Friends of San Damiano group, I think we would anticipate some more events happening at that facility next year.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? It's on to
Pool?
pool or community center?
Community center, we feel.
That's 116.
So the community center, Mark and I talked about looking at maybe just rolling this into the rec budget, moving forward, because we don't have revenue-producing activities, rentals anymore. So it's all expenditures of what the costs are. Some of the administrative salary percentages are in this budget. Supply costs that accounts for both the Park and Rec department and the senior center department. So all of the utilities to heat and cool the building, all the janitorial supplies. In 2021, we increased our contract to cleaning to 5 days a week, so we'll continue that for 2022. It really has become a program-centric facility between the number of programs the senior center offers during the daytime and Park and Rec after hours. And we continue to increase the amount of opportunities that we have on the weekends for recreation programs. And we have supported Monona-based organizations that would want to meet there. So if it's a Monona Grove High School banquet or a city function, we'll continue to house that. We just do not have, the full-time staff now for that. But yeah, this budget basically just has all the expenditures.
Anyone? Okay, so if you want to move on to the pool, 132.
Okay, so the outdoor pool, I'd have to go back through 14 seasons, but I'm pretty sure this was our highest revenue generating season. And we got a rock star in our aquatics director, Missy Miller, and to be able to have her pivot and develop a plan for COVID, and then, June 1st, we were able to go, without restrictions for a vast majority of the summer. We were open before some of the other public pools, which I think contributed to our financial success. We were open before Goodman, Sun Prairie, Middleton. The daily admission fee structure that we implemented a couple of years ago has really borne fruit. A lot of our day camps help come here. So daily admissions is actually more non-resident, about 55% non-resident than resident. Season passes are about 85% residents, our season pass holders versus non-residents. The rentals, a large chunk of that is the fee that Monona Swim and Dive Club pays to use the pool. So they pay a per swimmer fee, which comes out to about $18,000 a year for the use that they have. So this year includes a fee increase for daily admissions and season passes. The cost to operate the pool has gone significant. If you saw this summer, there was pools across the nation not opening or had delayed hours, much like you see across a lot of the industry that relies on seasonal laborers. And so that is a continued challenge. We've been a little bit insulated in Monona. We've been able to find staff. We have a great program of kids that grow up here, come to the pool every day, swim and dive, and we mentor them through volunteer opportunities. You can hire 15-year-old lifeguards now. That helps. And then when you have someone that can train them and knows the system inside and out, like our aquatics director, we can keep them for a couple seasons. So in this year, I think we can talk about just the wages for LTEs. This year, we were $10 an hour for lifeguards, $12 for head guard, and $17 for a pool manager. And so we are recommending that we go to $12 an hour for lifeguards, $16 for head lifeguards, and $20 for pool managers. So, and that's still not anywhere near what like City of Madison is paying for Goodman and Beaches, but I think it's going to be competitive enough to continue to be able to have staff. At the end of the day, we need a lot of 15 to 18-year-old staff members to be able to keep the pool open by code. And it is a challenge. I think, this isn't, I joked with someone the other day, I said, this isn't 1998, this isn't 2008, this isn't even 2018. There's a dramatic shift in what people's expectations are and what they're valuing, and whether they just don't need the money or they're making other decisions where they don't need to work as much as what maybe we all remember what high school and college looked like. So it is a challenge, and sometimes that means we have to hire more people knowing that they're only going to work 10 to 15 hours a week, which is not ideal. But I think, we hire well over 100 probably teenagers a year, and between different departments in the system, and maybe I would say less than 10 are what I would call the grinders that will pick up every shift and need that paycheck and will work 50 to 60 hours, and that's progressively gotten less over the last 15 years. So it's just a different dynamic, different climate that we're living in, and we just have to adapt to it. Everything else is kind of status quo in the pool budget. And we kept the levy, we actually reduced the levy a little bit from this for next year from this year.
Questions?
Alderman Moore.
Yeah, Jake, I'm wondering if you, I know that there was some discussion, at least on social media, for a bit around potentially other markets for employees, or or in the whole notion of could we extend ours if we were hiring older people, or if we were hiring, and I know that the Park and Rec has done a lot of work over the years testing the waters in a variety of ways. I just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, those people don't exist. Mm-hmm. It's just, we reach out to all different sites for how we recruit for people. With lifeguards especially, you have to have valid certification. So you can get that through us, that we do before the season. But the reality is, if you want to make $20 an hour or $25 an hour in an LT in this county, you can go find a job tomorrow and make that. And so we really have to find the people that want to be outside and can meet the qualifications of the job restrictions. So this idea of elongating the season even more than we already have is just, it's really challenging. It's such a tight window from the time that we have to start up mechanically the pool operation to when we can adequately train people. Even if they're certified, we still have to train them to our facility and make sure that we're meeting code and that we're comfortable that this facility is going to be safe. And that takes time. And so, we closed on August 29th this year, which was a Sunday. There was 2 other pools in Wisconsin that stayed open until that Sunday. 75% closed the weekend before. Another 50% closed the weekend before that. And so I think we just collectively have to have a little bit of understanding of kind of the statewide and the nationwide market for outdoor pools and what the expectation can be. So, I would love to keep it open. I'd love to open Memorial Day. I'd love to stay open till Labor Day. But there's a lot of cost with utilities that it's a gamble. When that discussion happened, it was 94 degrees out, at June, at Memorial Day weekend. Some Memorial Day weekends, it's 50 and rain. And so it's a big gamble to do that. It's more heating days, it's more staff cost days, so that you may not see the revenue. So recruitment is always an issue, and we will start that soon. We'll start recruiting over the holiday season for this year. But this idea of just make it work, let's be creative, it just doesn't happen that way.
Anyone else? Okay. I think that's everything, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Next, Brian Gatto with a whole string of stuff.
I don't know how I follow that, so thanks. My stuff is nowhere near as exciting as pools and ice cream and kids. But I will promise you that I will be expedient and brief. Let's start on page 23. 23, for legislative, judicial, and legal. There are no major additions to this budget with two minor exceptions. One, the judicial salaries is increased the 2.5% for the municipal clerk position. And then we did under legal retainer court, we did increase that to $65,000 to better match what we were seeing as a trend for legal retainage services the last couple of years for court. So that's been increased to reflect that. Otherwise, there's no other changes for these budgets. If there are no questions on that, we can flip to page 27. Under executive office, again, we talked about the sustainability items that are now incorporated in the budget. The only other major change here is we did increase the executive office other by $1,500. And that's mainly, there are some things that we didn't do in 2021 that we will likely do in 2022, and things that we did in 2021 that we'd like to continue to do in 2022. So those would be things like the Memorial Day Parade or participation in that. There's a cost for us to participate in that. We did, I think at least for the first time in a long time, had a staff picnic, I guess as a way to celebrate staff given the difficult last 18 plus months. And so we had that catered with the local restaurant. And that seemed to be a very good event to kind of boost employee morale, get people to get outside their offices and make connections that they might have missed over the last 18 months when they weren't in person as much. And then for other things like just our Zoom account, I think there's some storage, cloud storage that we need to increase with that, just given our frequent use of Zoom here. So that's the one change we're making there.
Mark, wasn't that the change was actually supposed to be 4,000, not 2,500?
Yeah, so I emailed it out last week, I believe, so it's actually $4,000.
Yeah, so I was saying you're adding $1,500 to make it a total of 4,000.
Right, but it was already added 1,500 because
Yeah, so it's
21.
Yep.
So that's supposed to be
So that's-
4,000 instead of 2,500?
Yes.
Correct.
Got it.
Other towns.
I'm not sure if this is the right place to bring this up, but it strikes me that we value our employees tremendously, but we're not able, because of budgetary constraints, to reward them financially so much. And so have we thought about, or I think we need to think about ways to show that we value them. When I worked for the state, for example, we looked at ways other than financial compensation. And for example, one of the things we did was we had the Employee of the Month, and every employee could nominate someone to be the Employee of the Month, and they got all kinds of kudos, and maybe they got a gift card for something. And they told everybody what they did, why they were nominated, and we had a committee that selected people. And I think that we need to get a group and sit down and figure out what we can do to show employees that we value them other than compensation.
No, I fully agree. I mean, I think that's the challenge when you're thinking of non-financial things. I think I've asked employees in previous places I've worked. I think I've had informal conversations with employees here. the short answer is always, well, you could do the trinkets, you could do the plaques and all that stuff. And well, that might be meaningful in the moment that they receive it. It's not of value to them, much later than that. So I tend to steer away from that type of stuff and focus on more of what you're talking about, the events or the ways that we can show public recognition, like a picnic, like a Employee of the Month. I think those are the type of things that the employees here find value in making those connections amongst themselves.
Yep. I just think that we need to put some effort into doing that. It's been a tough year for them, and it continues to be. And I hate to think if we lost anybody, how difficult it would be on all of us. So
And
I
quite-
think
quite
that,
frankly,
and I'm
we've
not sure
experienced
they
that.
realize how much we appreciate them.
Yep.
And I think we
I'll be
need
frank, Leah's not in the room yet, but, with the departure of the utility clerk and, Toya leaving her position here soon, there's been a lot of extra work that's been put on the front office staff over the last almost 4 weeks now. So we see that every time we have an employee leave, and that's citywide. So police department, fire department, whenever we have an employee that leaves, they're, all the remaining staff are asked to kind of pick up the slack, and that's just
I
part
mean,
of the
I
job. and
recognize
everyone
your
does it.
job is a piece of cake, but everybody
No,
else.
but I mean, everyone does it, but, they do it without being asked because they know that's part
So,
of being part of this community.
more, just, and I'd be happy to sit down with some people and, there are some things that you can do to, other than money, to make people feel appreciated.
And one thing is we did end up, again, having to delay the volunteer recognition, which we had, selected some volunteers for that, but we had also selected some employees that we were going to recognize at that. We were hoping to do that this summer, but then with COVID, we ended up doing it. So hopefully, we'll be able to do that next year, and we're going to have an accumulated group, I think, from the last 2 years for that. So there is some recognition for employees there.
But there is, I cannot tell you how much, when you have, for example, another employee recognizing an employee and said, this is what they did, and they did this, and everybody makes a deal. That really made people feel good. So I just think that there's some creative things we can do. And I know people try and tell people that we value them. But I'm not sure staff always feels that way.
Anyone else?
Then we can flip to page 97, for Community Development Authority. The only really tweak there is I did add $1,000 for economic development related training. There are some kind of neat opportunities that are out there that I think would be useful for Doug and I to be going through, just to kind of again build kind of our background and strength in some of those things related to tax-driven financing, revolving loan fund, those type of things. So I've added that there in this budget. I did leave the CDA staff support as it was in the 2021 budget. That's Gary Becker from Gary Becker Consulting, who does our TIP analysis. The reason I left it where it is quite frankly, within the last 6 months or so, we've seen a number of projects come in the queue that may have a potential TIP ask. Whether or not those projects end up getting to the point where TIP is actually granted is another question. But there are a number of levels of review of those TIP applications, including Gary's time to do staff memos, analyzing the TIP performers. So, you could maybe trim that number back a little bit, but I would not want to trim it a ton because we've got 4 or so projects that are in the hopper right now. That'll bleed into 2022. So, it'll be a busy year from an economic development standpoint in 22 as well as what we're seeing right now.
Any questions?
It's a good problem to have.
Yes.
Yeah. Doug?
Well, just a comment that even when there's things that come in that we decide not to provide funding for, staff has still had to do a bunch of work to get us to the point to evaluate, what's on the table. So.
Okay, then next we have page 144, tourism. This one, so for the expenditure standpoint for the tourism grants, where we stand right now is prior to August, we had about $50,000 in available tourism funds to disperse. At our August Tourism Commission meeting, we approved $5,000 to MESBA for the Chili Fest that just was put on. And then we had the fall funding cycle. The deadline for that just passed on October 7th, and the commission met this afternoon to review the 2 applications that we received, both from MESBA for the Lake Loop map and the Monona Guide, and ultimately decided to approve $2,500 each for both those projects. So that leaves us with a running balance right now of $40,716 that is still available to disperse if we get other project applications that come in, between now and October of next year, of 2022. And so likely we'll hold over some of that money just to see, what comes in. One thing that the finance director did mention this afternoon is that we will likely know our 2022 tourism amount by about February of next year, and we're projecting about $100,000 that would be available for disbursement in the fall of next year going forward. So just to give you some background on where we're at with that.
Questions?
Do we, if we get into the, for example, back into contributing to the parade, can we take that out of the tourism money?
I've been asked that question many times before. I think it's a very complicated answer. My initial impression is no, because it's very difficult to make the connection between participating in the parade, at least our participation as a city in the parade, doesn't drive hotel stays in the 3 local hotels plus the Airbnbs. They're also coming to become 50% of the lodging activity in town. That would be something I have to spend some time with legal. I don't think our participation, the $500 or $600 that we pay to participate, that would not be coverable. I think it's a whole separate question as to whether or not that event itself could be tourism eligible. I still think no, but I'd be more willing to engage in that question.
People don't come from far and wide to see the city council and the mayor walk in
No,
the parade.
maybe when Charlie Barons was supposed to be here a couple years, that might have driven a couple, but yeah, us, no, I don't think we.
But some of the
we would even-
participants may sleep in hotels.
Potentially, yes. So that's one of the discussions we had this afternoon is, and again, it's a little bit like pushing a rock up a hill because the hotels are not super forthcoming with their data because they don't need to be. But trying to get more data from them on, the stays you have, can you link that? When somebody walks into your establishment, do you ask them, hey, why are you here? Do they tell you, I'm here because of the parade or on a community festival or whatever? And we don't have that data right now, and so we're trying to figure out ways that we can work with the hotel establishments and Airbnb, which will be a whole other challenge to try to get some of that data so we can make that connection and say, when we've got an event in town, it typically draws this type of hotel stay. So it's more easy to make those funding decisions when you have that data.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just so you know, I have the estimate 160,000. We're probably going to be, just looking at the numbers, probably like 220,000 we're receiving.
And that's for the portion that goes to the general fund, not the
Just in
tourism
general,
expenditures.
well, that's how much room tax we'll receive. And like Brian said, Airbnbs is basically 50-50 right now with the hotels.
Anyone else?
Okay, and then the last one, if you just turn the page to 145 for Renew Monona Fund. Again, the only change here is that we did add $3,500 in planning salaries, and that's really to cover some of the salary time of the city planner who's been taking on a little bit more of the back office type work related to the Renew Monona program. And as I mentioned earlier tonight, that'll free up some flexibility so that we can hire that separate planning intern to provide some dedicated support for City Planner Coleman with just quite frankly, the amount of applications that are coming in, which again, good problem to have, but it's tough when you've got a planning department of one. I've been there before in my past life, and more hands is always appreciated. So, and then just to give you an update on kind of where that program is at from a funding standpoint, we have a total of $388,577 in loan money that's been dispersed since we reinstituted that program in March of 2019. We have about another $361,000 remaining in our current funding cycle that could be still dispersed in the next year or so. And we have a total of $1.3 million remaining in the pool in general. If you remember, when we reinstituted that program, we had about $1.7 million that was in the pot to begin with, and the CDA decided at the time but they wanted to kind of chunk out the money in about $250,000 amounts each year so that we didn't loan out more than $250,000 each cycle, so we always had money available. So we're doing pretty well in terms of that fund balance at the moment.
Questions?
I have a question about that. So it seems to me that that money that I forgot the percentage again. Is it 75% that goes to more like renew and more affordable housing, and then the other of the funds that we got from extending the TIF, which is what we use for renew? Isn't there a certain percentage that has to go towards like renew and affordable housing?
There's a certain percentage that could go to affordable housing. There's a certain percentage that I think you could use for affordable housing. I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah,
I think we allocated the whole amount. I think if I remember correctly, we allocated that whole amount.
The entire TIF amount went to the renew program.
Right.
Okay. We're anticipating that we could have another rollover, correct? In terms of TIF coming soon?
We have the possibility of, what is it?
TIF 7.
7, yeah, I was going to say 7.
Fairway Glen.
Fairway Glen will be coming up pretty soon. We have the option to extend that for another year, and we could capture one more year of
We do
increment.
the same thing.
We could do the same thing, yep.
That is our smallest
It's the
tip.
smallest TIF.
Right, but I guess I'm just wondering if we're doling out just small amounts every year, are we going to run into an issue where all of a sudden, because we roll over another, that we actually have more money than we would otherwise need?
Right, and I think we can have that conversation probably about a year from now,
Okay.
when we're close to deciding whether or not to close out that district.
Okay.
We can see where we're at, I think, again, as everything we've talked about tonight and the night previous, COVID's really thrown a wrench in this. We've had some people that have done a renewable loan program because of COVID, because they wanted to kind of capture the market where it was at. And we've had other people that were kind of starting right before, February of 2020, and they said, nope, I'm going to step back. I'm not in a position where I want to do that. So, as things improve, hopefully, we could see an uptick in applications. If we don't, then I think we could make that decision, at the end of next year and see where we sit.
And because the CDA has limited each year with the intention of spreading it out, have we actually hit our limit and turned people away?
No.
No, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the money always, so for example, in the year one, because we started in March and then COVID kind of hit, we'd only expended, it was less than, I want to say 75,000, so then that, 250 minus 75, that rolled over to the next year. So
Okay,
the
so-
money will always roll over, so that's,
Okay, so we haven't had a problem with people applying, we don't, okay,
no
great.
one's been turned away because of money.
Great, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Then,
Have we had anybody apply for the mortgage?
First time home buyers, no, we have not. I fielded some calls about that, but no one has ever moved forward with an application. I don't have a clear reason as to why that is. I suspect, part of it, again, is when we were reinstating this program, state interest rates were dropping quite substantially. So, in a normal pre-COVID, our 2% was probably pretty competitive. After that, it's kind of been fluctuating. So now it just kind of depends on what people can get, depending on their credit history and all the other calculations that go into it.
I do think that CDA needs to look at marketing a little better on the program. I think there's a lot of opportunities to capture some of the home buyer programs that are available. There's a particularly large focus on first-generation home buyers and capturing those folks. Granted, housing prices in Minnesota are insane right now, so that reach is a little strong, but I do think that there are some opportunities where we can partner with some of the community organizations that are focusing on those things, which would probably get us more ask for the renewable housing program.
Yeah, I agree. Just FYI, the renewable Monona budget's at $1.1 million fund balance, so there is money there.
anyone else?
Well, if we did increase, I agree with Alder Kerr, if we did increase our marketing there, I think part of it is, again, bandwidth in terms of staff, which I'm sensitive to, but, who would do that? Which staff member could you anticipate? It would be you?
Myself with some assistance from City Planner Paulin, and if we have the intern come in. So it could be a joint effort, for sure.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay.
That's what I got.
Thank you, Brian. Our final item before closed session is Leah. We're way ahead of schedule here, Leah. Page 42, I think.
I'm here. I don't have the transit on here, so we do the transit. Yeah.
Oh, transit, okay. We'll do transit after this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
IT. Not too many changes to the IT budget this year to talk about. The biggest line item in this budget is our tech support through Land Tech, and we are keeping that budget line item again at $70,000 for 2022. Our service contracts line is a line that continues to go up and will continue to go up, and the reason for that is because we are just having to use subscription-based software services more and more and more. It's just the way that the industry is going. And so, for instance, in the budget for 2022, we have 4 actually different software subscriptions that need to be renewed, and they're all antivirus and firewall and email filtering and security type stuff. So it's something that we're going to see going forward, and it's going to be an issue, I think, as we continue to have subscription software services in terms of having to move money that used to be capital budget money into the operating budget. So it's something that we're going to have to think about for the future. Our T1 line, which is our internet line that comes into City Hall, we reduced that budget this year because we switched to a TDS fiber line. So we saved some money there. Other than that, our website maintenance is just our annual fee to host our mymonona.com site. And then our equipment maintenance and repair budget, we try and keep at $10,000 because that's just for all the stuff that we didn't plan on that breaks during the year. So.
Any questions, Doug?
Probably more for Mark, but, well, how long are the software licenses for? And is there any way then that they can be treated as capital?
It depends, Doug. Some of them are 3-year licenses, and so we try to renew them like on staggered schedules so that we're not renewing them all in 1 year. But some of like our Office 365 licenses are an annual renewal, and that's, we're budgeting $13,500 for 2022 for that renewal. So it just depends on the license.
I don't actually know what it costs for an organization, but for example, my work operates fully on Google, on Gmail, and Google Docs and things of that nature, which I think is free. I mean, I don't know if there are extra add-ons for a professional organization, but I'm just wondering, I mean, things like that do exist that many organizations are switching over to, and obviously it would be a big transition to go from Microsoft over to Google, but that's just one suggestion about, just because I think when it's a subscription service, I feel like they intentionally make it so that you have to continually have to be updating and paying extra and all that. And perhaps I'm sure you've discussed this, but just an idea for the future.
Yeah, the one big issue that we have, Alder Groupie, is that we have to keep everything and we have to retain everything, including emails. So we actually, our Office 365 licenses are special government licenses that are made specifically for archiving, which I'm guessing you can't get with Gmail licenses. So
Thanks. Yeah, that's helpful to know.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Alder Curd.
I think Mark mentioned this briefly, that there was in one of the other budgets, a Zoom cost. I'm just curious, what is our Zoom footprint costing us?
That's a good question. I think we probably have at least 5 or 6 different
is it?
Zoom accounts right now. It was sort of one of those things where we had a city account, and then, the PD got their own account, and then Park and Rec got their own. It was just like everyone was sort of reacting to to COVID and doing what they needed to do. So I don't know if there's any savings in bundling those accounts together.
Yeah, I think the challenge is we couldn't run all of our city meetings on one Zoom account because if we had meetings that were happening simultaneously, you can't use the same account to run 2 meetings.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, we can definitely take a look at that. I don't know how many we can collapse, though. It's not the issue.
Yeah,
What is one cost?
It's about was it $20 a month.
15.
Is it $15 a month? So, a little less than $200 a month for one account. That's for only 1 gig of cloud storage, which has been the issue. When we have multiple meetings that we're doing, that ends up real quick within a month's time span, so then we have to deal with that. So it'd be nice to get at least 1 more gig of storage.
And it's not just meetings that people are using Zoom for. I mean, the senior center's doing classes, the Park and Rec department's doing classes, the library's doing programming. So, and the library may have more than 1 Zoom account for their programming, I'm guessing. So,
I mean, that was my argument when we did these Zoom meetings is, the fact that we're recording and keeping these, there's a cost to that. And if we're not capturing what that cost actually is, it's hard to make efficient decisions as to what that cost is. And there's probably server space that we're taking up that is a cost. And so I guess I just, in the long run, like to know what that is.
Anyone else?
Kind of go back to Doug's question. The reason it's not really capitalized because we don't physically own the asset, so it's a little bit different. It's not considered a fixed asset. You're just buying access to it. Like you purchase a pole or you purchase a car, it's a physical asset we need to keep. It's one of the big distinctions.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, Mark, you want to talk about
Yeah, so the very last page is the transit. So we talked about a couple months ago, we went out for bids for 5 years, got the bids back, and received 2. It was a large increase for the transit. Given the 2021 budget, the second to last line on the expenses, general service operating expenses, it went from $242,000 to $286,000. So that was a large increase. Part of that is paid by state aid, so the aid is about 55% of your expenditure. So that's why if you look at the second line on revenues, you can see that it went from 135 to 157. That's because of the higher the cost, the more their share is 55%. The property taxes did go up by $23,000. We also used fund balance applied, so we're basically used up the majority of the fund balance in that transit. So that's just basically a status quo. It's keeping the same loops, morning loops, the lift, and the afternoon loops.
Questions, Alder Thomas? Alder Thomas?
I'm probably the only one who has this opinion, but for years I have looked at the transit budget and I've watched the budget go up and up and up, and I have not watched the ridership go up and up and up. And now I look at this and we have, how many people do we have riding the transit service these days?
The last ridership report we had last month was 23.
So that's 2 ways, so that's 11?
Yes.
11 people.
Yeah.
But overall, especially in the Express, the ridership has gone up significantly over the past decade.
How many?
Until COVID.
It was at its highest, I think, an 11%.
So how many, what was the passengers?
Well, certain routes were standing room only.
Yeah.
How many passengers?
19 to 21 on the bus, so.
It certainly depends on the loop, you're
Yeah, it
correct, but
depends on the
overall ridership for the Express has gone up significantly over the past 10 years.
I think it was capped, I think we were right around 25, 26 is what.
And Lyft is almost back.
Lyft is now,
where
yeah.
it is,
Yep.
Where it was.
For
So now
Express,
it's at 10, 11. And if it doesn't go up because of COVID, at some point, do we sit there and say, I mean, we are subsidizing the riders. If we have 10 people and we have the seniors, and the cost is going up $25,000, that's $1,000 to $1,500 per year additional we are subsidizing. We aren't looking at van pools. We aren't looking at other options.
We are looking at other options. We're constantly in discussion, and we've talked about this at public meetings as well, about how to offer additional, park and ride to concerts using our existing services. We're looking to save costs for electric vehicles, adding an electric bus to our fleet in the next couple of years. We are looking, and we had an option to install a new bus stop on Winnequa that I hope would have attracted more riders and given us an opportunity for marketing, but we had to scrap that due to constraints and COVID. So there are a lot of ideas that we have both for marketing and for alternate routes, decreasing or changing routes to better accommodate our ridership and increase new ridership. But I think the challenge has been getting more in-person interaction with people due to the current climate. So I'm not disputing that it's a conversation that should continuously be ongoing, and we conceded that at a previous meeting as well, that we always need to be looking and seeing if the service is worth continuing or not. It sounds like also, Mark can perhaps speak to this or not, depending on, how comfortable he feels, but they had a meeting recently with Madison Metro, and it sounds like there are maybe some doors of opportunity for collaboration with them.
Shock.
At our next meeting.
Yep.
You can attend our next meeting if you'd like.
Right. In
Do we
addition
think
to,
Madison Metro is going to be cheaper than what we're doing?
I don't know anything about the meeting. I wasn't there, but we are going to talk about it at our next transit meeting with the committee. In addition to, in future meetings with Madison Metro, we will have some commission members or, one or two there so that they can report back to the commission as well. So that we will have greater
Very
involvement.
early discussions with Madison Metro.
Yes.
But they were positive, and there were some really positive things that came out of that, as potential. It's like, I hate to even say it because it's not, this is all very preliminary, and we haven't even had a meeting with the Transit Commission, but like not adding cost for them to stop on Winona Drive and Broadway, where their buses already go. So where previously we had heard, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a stop.
Having had experience with Madison Metro and looking at what other communities are paying them, I hold out little or no hope for Madison Metro being cooperative.
I understand that. But they're revamping everything, with the mid-2023 rollout.
They do have a new general manager who is definitely looking at things differently than has been looked at in the past.
And a new transportation director above him, Tom Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did have a meeting with Metro. They want to talk with us. It's, we're going to go further into it. But that goes back as far as your questioning. I did look back. Our highest was about 26 was the
Total passengers or 13 and 13?
no, about 26 per day. So 13 and 13.
13 and 13.
So we averages, like say the highest year we had for the Express was 5,900. So that was about the average. So you divide that by, let me see what the average is.
So Kathy, I would just say, I'm going to go back to what these guys said and just echo. First of all, I don't think that obviously we can gauge anything right now. We're still in COVID. We're still rebounding from COVID. But pre-COVID, it was continuing to rise. And the transit commission is looking at all kinds of has already looked at a bunch of options and is still looking at other options in terms of the routes and Madison Metro and everything else. So I understand the concern. It's a lot of money relative to the number of people that seem to be using it, but it's also a serious equity issue to not have any kind of public transit.
I just looked at, this is going up 18%, our share of it this year. And other budgets, we can't do certain things because we don't have the money, and I just struggle with that.
Right, I get it.
And it's not that I don't think that for some people it's of value. The question is, it's always one of priorities.
Doug, did you have something?
Yeah. So this budget and the property taxes going towards transit is for both services, right?
The Lyft and the Express.
So the number of riders you gave, that was just the Express? Or was that
Correct.
total?
So, yes. So the Lyft is about 23, so you divide that in half. So
about 23.
So if you had 23 rides per day,
yeah,
that includes drop them off is one lift and pick them up is the second lift. So it's 23 and 23. So 46 divided by, say, 23 riders total.
Yeah.
Per day.
What's
The Lyft and the Express.
What was the number you gave for an annual, I think, ridership, like 5,900? Or?
The highest we ever had was, what was the Express? I was looking at the Lyft.
I think you just said 59, didn't you?
Yeah, I was looking at the, I'm sorry, I was looking at the Lyft and I said a number.
I thought it was 11.
12,729 is the most we ever had.
Is that for both Lyft and?
That's
No,
just for
that was for
Express.
Express.
That's just Express.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, 2019, correct?
Correct.
And
So-
is that 29 or is that going both ways, so it's half?
That's
Yeah, so
So it's half.
it's
That
25 riders
was-
per day.
I-
25
Plus
riders,
the-
25
Still, total ridership was up
Yeah.
to 12,000. I mean, it was up significantly from the past 5 previous years. It went up every year, an increase of, I think, over 10% due to aggressive marketing and surveying and things of that nature. And again, I'm not saying I don't hear you, I do, but we are constantly reviewing this concept and talking about ways to improve as a committee, so.
I know you guys are wringing your hands and trying to do things. I mean, I don't question that. And I don't question the fact that it provides an important service for the seniors. I just think that I look at 18% here and I look at what we have to cut other places and what we can't do. And somehow we have to find a way to serve more people or spend less money.
I was just going to say, I really appreciate you, having a hawk's eye on the taxpayer dollars. I really appreciate that, Kathy. I know we share that same philosophy. But, I think, number one, we issued a transit survey this year, and we had over 106, I think it was around 159, 160 responses. And I really want to share that data with you. We're kind of crunching it and working it right now. But the majority of people are like, we want more service. We want weekend service, So that is kind of a limiting factor for us, is that we're doing this kind of serving the 9 to 5 crowd. And I understand it's good, it costs more, all of that. But I really want to share the transit survey data with you so you can see that, because I think that's important. Alder Moore mentioned equity issues, but it also goes beyond that as a sustainability issue. And as a sustainability city, it's really paramount that we have a public transit option. You'll see in the budget that Walmart pulled back their $10,000 a year funding. So why don't all of us give them a call and ask them to put that back in there? Because they really should be putting that back in there. It would be nice to see them funding us and funding this program, because I'm certain a lot of people use it to go there. And it benefits them. And as they have a bus stop right out, off their front step.
Mark, if you have it handy, the ridership numbers that you gave, 12,700, I think something, that was just the Express?
That's just the Express.
Do you have the same number for the Lyft?
That was the 5,800.
Okay, great, thanks.
So the total combined is 18,618. I can email this report I have for you.
Okay, yeah.
Can you send that to all of us?
Yes.
That'd be great. Anyone else? Alderman Moore?
Just-
As a follow-up to the comment that Alder Goforth just made about Walmart. I mean, it seems to me there are other, like, I know a lot of seniors, for instance, use it to go to Metromart, right? To go grocery shopping, besides Walmart, right?
Woodman's and.
Woodman's, right. And so, I mean, it just seems like there's a potentially some other sponsorship opportunities there for those establishments that are getting regular visits from those folks, you know, and
maybe we could work in the advertising piece that
Right.
we've talked about, you know,
Right.
as a part of this, like with
Right.
Walmart, you know, if they're willing to step up.
right.
Well, just so you know, Walmart was part of a developers agreement, so they were paying us $50,000 per year for 20 years, I believe. I don't know the exact date. I think it was 20-some years. 40,000 we used was basically considered for public safety, and the other we allocated to the transit for 10,000. So that was kind of the breakout of that 50,000. That contract has been up, you know, since 19 was last year. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Any other questions about the budget other than before we go into closed session? No? Okay. Then next item, C7, convene closed session under Wisconsin Statute Section 19.85, Friend 1, Friend C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is in regard to performance evaluations and salary adjustments. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Move to getting in closed session.
Second. Will clerk please call the roll?
I'm sorry, can't forget who made that call. Alder Kerr?
Sure.
Alder Thomas? Aye. Alder Goforth?
Aye.
Alder Grupe?
Aye.
Alder Moore?
Aye.
Alder Wood?
Aye.
We are in closed session. List of changes.
It was a tie between
Doug and I, we'd have to arm wrestle later.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Oh, can I?
I'm sorry, Mark.
Just because we're meeting November, the first Monday in November, I think that's November 1st. Is that? So if you want a budget amendment be in the packet, I assume you probably need them by tomorrow.
Talking about
For the-
capital budget
Or
or?
for the operating for the first read. And for the capital,
We have to have tomorrow, right?
capital we have to have tomorrow because we're meeting November 1st, right? So for
Right.
capital.
Monday, we're voting on the capital budget.
So for both of them, if you want in the packet, you need them, you want to get the packet out.
Kathy?
I have a question on voting on it on Monday. There is a lot for the council to decide whether it's option 3 or 4 or whatever. Do we have to vote on the capital on the 1st, or can we hold off till the 15th?
I'd really like a chance to discuss more in depth
Yeah, this
before we have
is
to vote.
not on the agenda. I mean, if we get to a point where you don't want to vote on it Monday night, we can have a vote on it then, but.
I mean, it's
I don't
not
know.
on the agenda discussion of it tonight.
Right. I don't know.
So I think somebody would need to make a motion on Monday to delay it
Yeah.
till the 15th.
Would you be okay with that?
Well, I think we just need to vote them by the 15th, right? So we can send them the numbers to the county so they can generate the tax bills. Because we'll be voting on operating on the 15th as well.
No, really? We don't want to do both.
Could
on
be a
the same
killer night, yeah.
Oh, my God, no.
Nancy?
Kathy, in all that I'm thinking about that, I would just say from my point of view, I just want to remind people that when we vote on the capital budget, we've never had the i's dotted and the t's crossed on specific projects, like public works, whether it's a road we're redoing or a park and rec, a park that we're redoing or whatever. We've never had an exact figure. Because of course, if we had, if we had an exact figure because we went out for bid on something, by the on it, by the time we got around to sticking a shovel in the ground in the spring, the contract would be void. So it is so I guess what I'm saying is, in my view, unless we're really thinking about option number 1, which I can't believe.
Okay, we can't really keep talking about
Okay,
this.
okay.
Can I ask a different, there's a meeting right before council on Monday, right? The finance?
Finance personnel.
Because if nothing else, I don't know, I just think it might be nice to be able to discuss the entire thing as a council together at some point before we are scheduled to vote on it. But, we have talked about it a lot, and I was going to say if there was time before, but.
Well, that's what you'll be doing, is discussing it on Monday.
I know, but you know what I mean.
Like another committee to the whole.
No, I mean, I know that that's not going to happen within the time frame that we have, but it's just hard that we can't be together more free, just the constraints of public meeting and
Yeah.
notice and things like that. That's okay.
So I guess if someone does want to delay it, then we'll have to have a motion to that effect on Monday. And vote on it. So, okay, is there a motion to
Move to
adjourn?
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Give Jen a second.
We are adjourned.